I wonder if you might just tell me a bit about your role there at the service.
Okay, so my role, I'm the IPS Employment Specialist, Individual Placement and Support. It is my role to help service users identify their job preferences, and then with them job preferences in mind, I will go out and explore employment opportunities for them. I'll meet with employers on their behalf. I might or might not, depending on the service user's preferences, indulge the employer into what my role is and why I'm supporting a certain person. From there, we'll discuss benefits counselling. You know, if someone is on a disability payment or a job seeker's allowance payment, how will employment affect their payment? How will it affect their right maybe to a medical card or to rent allowance or stuff like that? So the service user is fully aware before he or she starts employment, how this may affect their benefits and what their, I suppose, bottom line will be at the end of the week in financial terms should they take up employment. Believe it or not, there are cases where it may cost someone to be employed, depending on the amount of hours that they're going to earn and the welfare payment they're in receipt of. So, you know, work, there's a lot of benefits to work in terms of daily and weekly structure and routine to help people with mental health issues. But, you know, if it's not financially viable, all these things kind of fade into the background too. It has to be, it has to work for the person. So that's my role. I make sure that both the job preferences are followed, the skill set is there. If not, we might look into doing a little bit of training. I help with CV preparation. We do a lot of interview preparation. Just general support around employment. Time unlimited. Again, once the person is in the job, I'll continue to support them in that role. Weekly, initially for the first month, maybe I'd contact them weekly to make sure everything is going okay. After that, I would contact them monthly until such a time as the person decides that they no longer need the support from IPS. So, you know, it's about building relationships and getting people to understand that you're there for their benefit and to help them progress into employment and from there into the life that they always wanted. You know?
Sounds incredibly practical kind of work. And
super practical. Absolutely super practical. It is, when we're talking about it, the easiest thing in the world to do. But you have to throw in the different factors into the mix. But it's still such a simple solution. And the benefits of someone who believes in it and gives it an honest go, because there is a lot of trepidation and worry and I suppose fear of the unknown. Some of the people I work with would never have worked before, and that sense of a lacking in confidence might overwhelm them. And there's an awful lot of people I've worked with who have a huge desire to gain employment, and once they gain that employment, the fear overwhelms them and they might not even make it through the door on the first day. That is the reality. But for those who can overcome that fear and move into it and become employed, the difference within a small matter of weeks is it's immeasurable. It really is. You know, that the confidence is back. They're feeling good about themselves. They have a few pounds in their back pocket. They're able to go downtown on a Saturday afternoon with their mates and maybe buy some clothes or have a coffee or go out that night. And the socialisation aspect of it all, they're meeting new friends, they're getting new ideas. It just increases and increases and increases the feel good factor. Then on the other side of that, I suppose, towards the cost to the state, people aren't being rehospitalised. Their medication could be reduced. The waiting list to see clinicians is coming down because people are, they're in work and they're getting more confident and they're not sitting at home and thinking about all that can go wrong. Instead, you know, they're their weeks are starting now on a Sunday evening where they say, right, I'm going to have a shower and I'm going to prepare my lunch for work in the morning. They're up on a Monday morning, they're going to work, they're meeting people, they're coming home from work, they're cooking dinner. That lasts through the week. Weekends are for their social time, as opposed to getting up on a Monday morning, having no prospects, having nothing to do. I don't want to say wallowing, but you know, wallowing is what they're doing, and it's all negativity. So it is. Whereas employment, such a simple thing in terms of practicalities, employment can overcome all that, or help them overcome all that. So it's a it's a very practical program, but has the opportunity, I think, to become a hugely successful program.
It sounds like it, and it sounds like it's almost something we take for granted. Just
Definitely, we know people who have worked all their lives. I was 14 or 15, I suppose, when I had my first job. You know, you're probably the same, and all our families are probably the same. But for those who haven't, it's a life change. You know, it really is. It's a watershed moment where that first pay packet, and you say, oh, hey, you know, I am now contributing to society. I'm an everyday participant in society. And for someone who has never done that before, that feeling must be fantastic. You know, it really must be to feel, is accepted the right word? I don't know. You
yeah,
know,
it sounds like it's empowering in a way, and also kind of validating of there must be this fear for a long time of, you know, since I haven't done this, can I do this?
yes, exactly. Very empowering. And as you rightly said, it's not a case of someone coming in here to meet me and me deciding are they eligible for employment. You know, one of the principles of IPS is there's absolutely zero exclusion. All anyone has to do is express an interest in finding work. That is it, regardless of skill set, work experience, degrees, education, and nothing matters. The fact that they want to work is good enough for their acceptance onto the APS program. And in sense of empowerment, they're not coming in here and being asked to jump through hoops, or, you know, prove this to me or prove that to me. It's, do you want to work? Yes. What would you like to work at? I don't know. Okay, let's sit down and have a chat and see what you think you'd like. And it doesn't work the first time, Emmett. You know, the first job that someone gets, they mightn't like it. That's fair enough. I think the real power of IPS is if you try something and it doesn't work out, we just start again. It's not a case of we've tried it, didn't work out, move on to the next person. That person can stick with IPS for as long as they deem necessary. So, you know, I could be working with people for years, and there's no pressure on me to kind of move them off, or to get someone else in, or to get them into training, or get them doing what society thinks they should be doing. It's all based on individual preferences, and always will be.
See that sense of, it sounds like the person has a lot of autonomy in how they go about it on their part.
Or acceptance is another word. You know, they should feel ideally completely and totally accepted for who they are and where they're coming from. And in terms of employment, disability, you know, it doesn't define anybody. You know, we're all capable of doing something. We're all capable of getting out there and putting a bit of a structure on our lives, and earning a few pounds, and meeting new people, and you know, living the life that we want.
Do you find that is a hurdle you encounter a lot? That just getting someone into that mindset of that they are capable.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Sometimes I feel that people intentionally put barriers in front of themselves. You know, they want to work, but the fear of working, they'll turn around and you know, I'm exaggerating this when I say this, but they might say, look, I want to be a rocket scientist. You know, something that's completely out of my league. You know, that we've absolutely no chance of achieving. But that's fair. That's fair. I think over time, um, judging on the relationship that I can build with people, you'll uncover what it is that they want to do. I would say upon 90% of the people I work with would have came into this program with a different idea to what they wanted to do as to what they're actually doing. And it turns out, in my experience, after having conversations with them, it mightn't necessarily be the job or that the particular role that they're looking for. It's the environment. So if someone says to me, "Listen, I want to work in super value." Why do you want to work in super value? Because there's no pressure, and I'm not going to be responsible for anything. I just have to stock things on the shelves and all that. So I said, well, if and would you think of anywhere else? No, it has to be super value. And then you might say, well, to do the same thing in Tesco's, and you get the same breaks in Tesco's, or to do the same things in and all of a sudden, instead of having like one option for employment, you might come out of that conversation with 9 or 10 opportunities for employment. And from there, you can build on, well, what are you good at? Well, I'm good at meeting with people. Okay, so maybe it mightn't be central or super value. It might be a retail setting with clothes. It might be a restaurant serving customers. It might be, and it helps them to kind of uncover probably A, what their preferences are, and B, where the potential lies. And I think over time, people start to see that it is work. I'm not expected to know everything on the first day. I'm going to be trained up in most cases. I'll have a month to 6 weeks to kind of get the run of the place, to start to realise that it isn't that big of a barrier to overcome after all. I think that's really where, for me, the success isn't in getting people jobs. I think most of the success that I would have would be keeping them people coming back every week, keeping them engaged, giving them a focus. That's where I count my success. Obviously, if I can get a job out of it, fantastic. But if I'm working with someone for 6 months and they've had no job, but they're still coming back, that's a success.
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, that's huge. And did you always want to work in IPS or?
No, I always had an interest kind of in social care / mental health side of things. And I worked for years as a sales rep, and redundancies came up when I was 35, I think it was. So I took the redundancy and I said, you know what, I'm going to go back to college. So I went back and I done social care practice in college, 4 years there. And from there I moved into children's residential, worked there for a couple of years, and then I moved into a homeless hostel. I was working in a homeless hostel here in Sligo for 4.5 years. And that really gave me an insight into mental health and how people on the fringes maybe are marginalised and are treated. And I suppose, if I'm being completely honest, Emmett, that they're just the same as you and I. They've just for whatever reason, they've gone down a different path, and an awful lot of the time, it's they're victims of something themselves. That brings them to that point. And while I was in the homeless hostels, I started a program called Skills for Life, or Basic Life Skills. I can't remember exactly what it was called. Whereas I'd bring, every hour I'd see a different person, and depending on their level of skill set, I might be teaching them about self-hygiene. I might be teaching them how to work a washing machine. I might be teaching them how to cook. I might be teaching them how to budget their money. Talk about alcohol consumption and trying to lessen that, every week. Skills, life skills. We got Sligo Leader here to sponsor some blocks and some timber, and we set about creating workshops, because it was an all-male homeless hostel. So some people would have skill sets that others didn't have, and it was just a way of kind of encouraging them to use them skills to build up their confidence, that maybe they would go out and start looking for a job and help themselves get out of the place where they're in. And it was going well, and then IPS was established in Sligo. I just applied for the job, passed the interview, and got it. And I'm doing it now since May 2019.
Wow, that's That's really funny. You mentioned that about the homeless hostel. That's kind of how I got into psychology. Actually, was I was working in a hostel in Galway, and it was the cheapest hostel in town, run down, and it just ended up that it was less and less tourists, and it was more and more just people who were homeless looking for a place to stay. You'd have long termers in, and um, you'd hear a lot of kind of similar stories coming through of people just bad run of luck, can't find something now, and now they've fallen in with a bit of a gang, a group, and they kind of drink the day away and hang out.
And a lot of the time there, something has gone on in their lives too that has brought them to that point. And, you know, to a certain extent, you can almost understand it. Like, if you're swimming against the tide all the time, eventually there's going to come a time where you say, enough is enough. The lads over here, no responsibilities, no worries. Why wouldn't I join them? And to get out of that again then is it's an astronomical achievement if you can do it. It really is.
Yeah, and that sounds amazing that the work you were doing there with the kind of leaning into the skills they had and just kind of starting this project, putting them to work.
Yeah, it's very simple, and it's a very simple concept. Do you know how to use the washing machine to wash your clothes so that when you go out, you're presentable? No, I don't. Well, come on, let's learn. And in a hostel of 21 fellas, um, what I found happened was if they see me working with one fella, what are you doing with him? And you tell them about it, as opposed to maybe in modern society, a man might be teased about that. Whereas down there, I kind of found that, it's acceptable to ask for help. And from there, I also started up a thing which I found was hugely successful, like a games night type of thing. So we might play chess, or we might play drafts, or we might, whatever it was, and it was for kind of social aspect to get people talking. And after maybe 6 weeks, the games were forgotten about, and people were coming down to the living room at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night and having a chat with each other. And from there, someone will ask a question and it'll be, well, in my experience, this is what I done, this worked for me, or would you have a end of a screwdriver? And it just became where they all became supportive of each other. Not all of them, not everybody took part, but 10 or 12 maybe took part every week. Which, again, slowly building confidence and acceptance and inclusion and all these things. So everything that works for IPS.
Yeah, and that makes total sense to me. I know, in my experience anyway, guys sometimes they need they need something, whether it's a pint or whether it's a football, to facilitate them just opening up a bit. Like, it'd be very rare in my experience anyway. They would just meet and have a little chat together. You need some kind of excuse to let it happen, kind of.
You need that carrot, don't you? Yeah.
Exactly. This is it, exactly. Do you know what I want to ask as well is, and how have you found it working specifically with a support service for people with experience of psychosis?
To be completely honest, Emmett, the same. Exactly the same. I won't say that I'm not interested in someone's diagnosis, but it doesn't really make any difference to me. I meet the person, we find out what type of work they're looking for, and off we go. I can't say that it has had any impact at all on my approach to how I do my job. I'm not a clinician, so I might not even understand some of the diagnoses or the terms anyway, but it genuinely, it doesn't matter. It's not something I look into. I just get on with it. It doesn't define who they are, and it shouldn't define who they are either. So,
it sounds like a great approach to take to it. It kind of doesn't factor into it. You just look at the individual.
Yeah.
Maybe one more thing I'd like to ask you about is just kind of how how a typical day would look for you? Just, it sounds like that's a hard question to answer because it sounds incredibly variable, but if you could make a fist at it.
There is no such thing as a typical day. What I try to do, I work with a maximum of 20 people at a time. So I try to divide, so at the minute I'm working with 17, so I try to divide my day up into Monday I'd work with 4, Tuesday I'd work for another 4, Wednesday for another 4, and so that I'm not kind of overlapping. But I do overlap. It's just the nature of the game. So it might be a case of I'd get up in the morning and might see the easy way out. I'd see what jobs are online first. If there's any, do I have anyone that will match up any of them? Then I'll have a couple of meetings with people. I'll either meet with some employers or I'll make appointments to meet with some employers. I might be writing up notes. I might be doing CV preparation. Generally, it's I'm out there looking for jobs most of the time. It's probably the easiest way to define it. Cold calling, I do an awful lot of cold calling, which is a bit relaxed, obviously, during the pandemic. But now that things are opened up, if there's any are open, to me that's an opportunity. So I'm in there seeing if they're looking for someone, what are they looking for in an individual, and am I working with someone who would fit the criteria, and if not, what do they need to do to fit the criteria? So then I might be researching training opportunities, might be linking in with case officers and DSP. I'll be attending community mental health team meetings and EIP team meetings. It can vary, and believe it or not, Emmett, I could do none of that one day and I could do all of it the next day. It's just the way it goes, So yeah, it keeps you on your toes.
Say so. It sounds kind of nice though that it can be so varied and something different the whole time.
It is fantastic. I don't ever see myself being able to go back and sit in a 9 to 5 where it's kind of mundane and you're doing the same thing over and over. I think we're all the same in the fact that we all kind of like a little bit of a challenge, or we enjoy the chase, and I think that's really where I really enjoy that, and having the opportunity to do that several times a week is fantastic. And then the added bonus is, if I get it right, someone gets a job. So it's very hard to become disheartened. Touch wood at the minute.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're well suited for it and well able for it anyway.
Thank you. Well, hopefully time will tell.
Well, you're in it long enough now. They haven't gotten rid of you.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Ian, I think we can leave it at that. Thanks so much for doing this. It was great to talk to you, and just for me, super interesting to hear about what you're getting up to up there.
No hassle, Emmett. Yeah, no problem.